Hey guys, this is Eric Vasquez here with a brand new tutorial for you today from designcuts.com. Now in this tutorial we're going to be learning to create a Japanese tea packaging design in Photoshop. We will be using the Spectacular Textures and Patterns bundle featuring a massive variety of high quality textures and patterns that will bring new life to your design work. Today we will be working with a few of these patterns and textures courtesy of Alien Valley and YouandiGraphics. Now, along with that, we'll be using a couple of elements from a mockup in the Design Cuts marketplace. Now, if you're all ready to get started, then fire up Photoshop and let's begin. Now, we're going to start off here just by creating our new document, and I'm just going to give it a name. I'm going to call it Japanese Tea Packaging Design, but you guys can use any naming convention that works for you. Now, for the dimensions, you want to make sure that you're in pixels here, and we're going to set it to 2300 pixels wide by about 2000 pixels high. And then go ahead and make sure the resolution is 300 pixels per inch, color mode is RGB, and background contents you can leave as is. Then just go ahead and click Create. Now, once we have our new document, the first thing we're going to do is come up to File and choose Place Embedded. And we're going to start off just by navigating to the Freebies folder for this tutorial so that we can bring in our first freebie. Okay, and this freebie is going to be one of these awesome textures from Alien Valley. It's a nice worn paper texture. Okay, so you choose place and it comes in automatically with the file name and as a smart object. So before I do anything else, I'm going to hold the control key and click on it and then choose rotate 90 degrees counterclockwise. Now from here I'll drag outwards while holding Alt, Option, and Shift on the keyboard just to scale it up and make it nice and large. Now from here I'll press return on the keyboard to apply my changes. The next thing we're going to do, let me just move my layers panel over here, is click on the adjustment layer icon and add a solid color adjustment layer. Now for the color here, we're going to use 868686, which is a nice medium gray color. And then we're going to change the blend mode from normal to color. And then let's come back down and add a hue saturation adjustment layer on top. Now for this one, you'll notice over here in the properties panel, what I want to do first is check off this box that says colorize. Now once I've done that, I'm just going to modify a few of these sliders here by setting the hue to about 36, and let's make the saturation somewhere around 51. Alright, so it's a nice warm tone. It's a little bit more uniform than the original coloring of the Text 27 Smart Object, but you can see if I turn those layers off, it's a little more reddish and orangish, whereas this is more of an all-around kind of, beige color. Okay, so once you've done that, we can just go ahead and scrap that background layer, and we now have our background set up. So let's go back to the File menu and choose Open so we can now begin creating our scene. Alright, so come back to the freebies, and now what I'm going to do is pull in a few of these elements from this coffee branding packaging mockup, courtesy of Mockup Zone in the Design Cuts marketplace. And the first object that we're going to open here is the wooden pad PSD. So go ahead and open that up. And I'm just going to move this tab to the side, click and drag this whole folder into my working document, and then press Command-Control-T on the keyboard to do a free transform. Now what I want to do here is hold Alt, Option, and Shift and drag outwards from any of the four corners of the bounding box, and then I'm also going to rotate this mat a bit just to make it a little bit more interesting. Okay, and then press Return once you have something like that. Now notice over here in the Layers palette, I actually want this layer to be above both of my adjustment layers. Right now it's sitting just below the two that we added in the previous step. So a quick and easy shortcut to do that is to hold the Command-Control key and tap the right bracket 2 times until it's at the top of the layer stack. Conversely, if I wanted to move it down in the Layers palette, I would hold Command-Control and use the left bracket. Okay? Now let's move on. I'm going to add a few more objects here. Let's come up to File, Open again, and this time we'll open the black circle case. We're going to do the same thing, move it over, click and drag the whole folder in here, press Command-Control-T on the keyboard, and now this one I'm going to move over to the lower right hand corner and maybe just make it a little bit larger by dragging outwards while holding Alt, Option, and Shift. Come back up, choose File, Open again, and this time let's open the teapot from the top. Same thing, we're going to drag this into our file. And now for this object, I want to make it a little bit larger. All right, maybe somewhere about there. I'm just going to slide it over a bit and kind of crop it along the top here. All right, and if you want, you can move it down a little bit more, just over to the right in this top section here, this little area. All right, and then we'll come back and open up our next object. This time I want to open the Plant Bouquet 1 PSD file, click and drag to bring this into my document, and for this one I want to move it over to the left side of the wooden mat and rotate it so that it follows basically the same line, so it's going the same way as the mat. Right, somewhere about there looks pretty good. And then press return on the keyboard. We can always come back and move these things around and adjust them however we like, but I'm just setting them up this way for now to leave a nice space in the middle for our branded tea container. Now I'm just going to close a few of these objects here. And now what I want to do is open up another file. This time we'll open the white metal pack from top, and this is going to serve as our main branded tea packaging. So if you expand this folder right here, you'll see inside there's a red highlighted Smart Object layer that says Replace. Just go ahead and double click on that and you are now inside of this folder, which is the main kind of area where we can add our artwork. All right, so come back up to the File menu, choose Open, but this time let's go ahead and open some of our freebies from YouandiGraphics. The first one we're going to open here is Japanese Pattern Tile 10, and then just click Open or press Enter to open it. Click and drag to move this tab to the side. And now what I want to do is bring this tile into this empty Smart Object layer. Okay, and all I'm going to do here is press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, scale it down, and move it so that it's in the upper left corner. It should kind of snap into place like that. Now I'm just going to scale it down from the lower right edge here just by dragging inwards while holding the Shift key, and then press Return to apply the changes. Now I'll press Command-Control-J to duplicate it, and then if you remember from before, Command-Control in the left bracket to move it down one spot in the layers palette, and now press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, click, hold the Shift key, and slide it over until it snaps into place. Alright, now let's do that again, but I'm going to select the top layer, hold Shift and select the copy below, press Command-Control-J to duplicate them both, and then Command in the left bracket 2 times to move both of these copies 2 and 3, just below the original 2 on top. Now press Command-Control-T again, click, hold the Shift key, and slide these over until they snap into place. Now let's go ahead and grab all 4 of these by selecting the first one, holding Shift and selecting the last one, and then pressing Command-Control-T and scaling it down just a bit more. Somewhere about there. Now what we're going to do is press Return to apply the changes, and then press Command-Control-E to merge these 4 layers together. Now again, duplicate this merged layer, Command-Control-J, move it down, Command in the left bracket, and now press Command-Control-T, click, hold the Shift key, and drag it down. Okay, now we're just going to tap it down until it lines up, and that's looking pretty good. So now let's select both of those layers and press Command-Control-E on the keyboard to merge them all together. Now I'm going to duplicate this layer maybe 3 or 4 times just to get rid of those thin white lines that were here before. See, if I have only one copy here, you can see these thin lines going through the pattern. So if I just duplicate that a few times, it gets rid of them. Okay, so now merge those 4 together, and we're in pretty good shape so far. Alright, so now let's select that pattern layer, press Command-Control-J to duplicate it, turn off the visibility of the original merged layer below, select your duplicate layer, and press Command-Control-I on the keyboard. And that's just going to invert this pattern. Now what I want to do is press W on the keyboard to get my magic wand tool. Now if I come over here and I select an area of this black here, I want to select all the other similarly colored areas. And to do that, I'll come up to the Select menu and choose Similar. Now, once I've done that, I'm going to have to come back up to the Select menu and now choose Inverse. And now what I'm going to do is click on this icon at the bottom of the Layers palette to add a layer mask. Okay, so now you can see I've knocked out all of the black so that we're only left with this tan color. So let's go ahead and double click this layer now to bring up our layer styles. Check off the color overlay option, and now let's change the color to E65C30. Okay, enter that hex value right here, then just go ahead and click OK. Now the next thing I'm going to do, just collapse that, is press U on the keyboard to get my rectangle tool. As soon as I select this tool over here, you'll see it says rectangle tool and it shows you the shortcut, which is the letter U. Now if I come up here to the top toolbar, I'm going to select the stroke and choose None for the fill, come to the fill itself, and now I'll click on this little icon in the upper right hand corner for the color picker. Now I want to use that same hex value, E65C30, click OK, and now all we're going to do is click and drag out a rectangle that goes across our pattern. Okay, somewhere about there, looks pretty good. I'm just going to move it up a little bit, play around with the size and positioning a little, You can press Command Control T to do a free transform, and then kind of, experiment with the size and placement a little bit more. Let's make it a little bit larger. That looks good. Maybe just tap it down a bit. Make it a little taller. I'm just trying to prevent there from being any, strange little white gaps or areas like that creeping in. And now one other thing that you can do here to make sure that this is centered is add a new layer, press D on the keyboard to get your default colors, and then press Alt, Option, and Delete. Now this is just going to fill a new layer with a solid color. Now if I press Command Control T to do a free transform, you'll notice that you have these handles on all four corners and in the middle. So as long as you have your rulers over here on the side, you can just click and drag a guide from the side to the middle and from the top down, and then press Command, Control, and the semicolon key to reveal your guides. Now just go ahead and delete that layer, and you know exactly where the center is. So if I select my orange rectangular box here and press Command, Control, T, I can now line up those handles with the handles in the center. Okay, something like that looks pretty cool. And I'm just going to press Command Control T and then hold the Alt Option key and drag out from the right handle to extend it evenly on both the right and left sides just a little bit more. Alright, so now let's press Command Control J to duplicate that layer. Now once you've duplicated that layer, press the letter U once again, come up here to the top toolbar, and for the fill, choose None. Now this time for the stroke, let's go ahead and click on that. We just want to add a solid white stroke, and you should have some recently used colors up here. If not, you can just click on the color picker again and just go to solid white. Okay, and make sure that you have a stroke of about 4 pixels. So now what we have is our orange rectangle, and then on top of that we have an empty rectangle with a white border. So what I want to do now is select that white border, that layer with the white border, and press Command Control T to do a free transform. Now I'm going to hold the Alt Option key and then move my cursor over the right or left handles and just drag inwards a bit, and you can see that that's moving it in an equal amount on both the left and the right sides. Now let's go ahead and do the same on the top. So move your cursor over either the top or the bottom and click and drag inwards while holding the Alt Option key. So now you've got a little bit of padding on all 4 sides of your box. So from here I'm going to add a new layer, press T on the keyboard to get my type tool, and then let's go ahead and make sure that we have a solid white foreground color selected, which you should. If you go ahead and press D to reset your default colors, then press X to toggle back and forth, you should have solid white. Now what I want to do here is add some text. So just for a second here, I'm going to pop over to my text editor, and I have these 4 Japanese characters selected, which translates to traditional roasted tea. Now you guys can go ahead and select this text. I have provided it in the written portion of the tutorial where you guys can just copy that from. Okay, but I've just put it here in a text document to keep it easy. So now I'm just going to paste this text here, and now I'm just going to move it down a bit, and I'm going to open my character panel. So to do that, come up to Window and choose Character. Now I'm going to select my text here by clicking a few times in the text box. Now I can come into my character panel, and I'm just going to change this typeface to Heisei Mincho Bold. Now for this, you guys can use any nice bold typeface that you want to use. The important thing is getting these characters in there. Now click to highlight the text again, and now let's change the size to about 67.35, and I'll increase the tracking to about 60. So you can type in 60 manually. Okay, and you guys can use any bold typeface for this. It's really more about just getting these characters in there. Now let's go ahead and select our 2 rectangle layers. Just hold the Shift key, select the top one, then the bottom one. Press Command Control T to do a free transform, and just hold the Alt Option key and drag both of these out a bit, just to give a little bit more space around our design here. Now I'm going to add another new layer, press T once again to get my type tool, and this time I'm going to type out Sencha Fukamushi Green Tea. Okay? And for this typeface, I'm going to just go ahead and use any kind of light condensed typeface that you guys have. And one that I've been liking lately is this one called Cocoa Goose. It's kind of a weird name for a font, but it's pretty nice looking. But you guys can use any nice condensed typeface, and just make sure that you have a solid white color selected. And let's go ahead and use the character panel once again to change this to 21.53 size, and then use your move tool, press Command Control T, and slide this underneath your characters. Now one other thing that we need to fix here is the tracking. I'm going to click inside here and change the tracking setting back to 0, just so that it fits nicely beneath our text. Okay, now just tap it down a few times and kind of center both of these lines of text in the box. Now, once you've gone ahead and done that, we're going to just press Command-Control-S to save it, and then Command-Control-W to close out of this tab, and you should now see your nice T box here, your metal T packaging. So I'm going to move this tab to the side, collapse the folder, and click and drag the entire thing into my mockup. Now I'll press Command-Control-T on the keyboard and click and drag outwards from any of the 4 corners while holding Shift to scale it up. Alright, and what I'm looking for here is just trying to get this nice and big in the center of the wooden mat. Alright, something like that looks pretty good. And now let's go ahead and open up our next object. So at this point, what I'm looking for is the teabag with stickers. So go ahead and open that up in Photoshop. And we're going to do the same thing. We're going to come inside this folder here, double click on the smart object that says replace, turn on this color fill adjustment layer, click inside, and we're going to use the same orange fill color that we used before, which is E65C30. Okay, and then just move this to the side for a second. Same thing with this tab. And what I want to do is grab those same Japanese characters that I was using before. And again, that just translates to traditional roasted tea. So I can either just come back into my metal white box here, select the text, and copy it, or you can just manually put it back in. However you want to do it is fine. So back here in your Smart Object layer, create a new layer, press T on the keyboard to get your type tool, click and then paste these characters, and now all we're going to do is reduce the size so that it fits nicely in here. Okay, so I'm just using a free transform to tap this over, center it a little bit, and then go ahead and press Command-Control-S once you're happy with the size and placement, and then Command-Control-W to close out. Now collapse that folder, and I'm just going to press the F key a few times to change my view here. And I'm just going to move this T box, the metal T tin, down for a second just to minimize that. And I'll grab the tea bag with the sticker and drag it over here into my main mockup. Now again, I'm going to use the free transform tool to scale it up a bit while holding Alt, Option, and Shift. And then I'm just going to rotate it, maybe move it down a little bit. But at the moment, it's actually inside of my white metal pack. So what I want to do is press Command-Control and the right bracket to move it out, collapse that folder, and then Command-Control and the left bracket to move it below, because we want to make sure that that shadow is being cast upon the tag here on the tea bag. If I leave it on top, it looks kind of funny how, that's on top of the shadow. It should really be like that. Okay, now I'll press Command-Control and the tilde key to come over here, and I can close out of this. I don't need to save it because I have everything over here that I need. And now let's go ahead and bring in another object that we're going to brand. So I'm going to come over here and open the Craft Box with Circle window file, choose Open. And now we'll do the same thing. I'm going to come inside of this highlighted layer that says Replace. And in here, it should be basically empty. You'll probably just have a single layer in here. So let's go ahead and double click on that. And again, we're going to use the same fill color, E65C30. All right, press Return. And now we can go ahead and open another pattern. All right, so I'm just going to back up a step here, come into my Freebies folder to YouandiGraphics, and now select Japanese Pattern Tile 15. Okay, I'm just going to move that to the side here, click and drag the pattern into my document, and just kind of experiment with the size and the placement of some of these fish here until you get something that you're happy with. I think that looks okay. I like having them nice and big, kind of going in opposite directions like that. And then all we're going to do is place that above the fill layer, duplicate it by pressing Command-Control-J, and then turn off the visibility of the original layer below. I'm going to do the same thing that we did before with our pattern by first inverting it by pressing Command-Control-I, press W to get your magic wand tool, and now click on any of the dark parts of the image here, come up to Select, choose Similar, and now come back up to Select, choose Inverse, and add a layer mask. Now double click on this layer, and what we want to do now is change the color overlay, but instead of using orange, I'm going to make it solid white. Okay, so now all the fish are white on top of your orange background. Okay, so if you remember before, I had just minimized my metal tea box over here, and I'm going to come back inside of that for a second into the Smart Object so that I can grab this lockup here with the logo on it. So I'm going to select that top layer, hold the Shift key, and select my bottom rectangle layer, and then click, hold the Shift key, and drop it into this Smart Object file. Now I'll press the Shift key and tap the up arrow a few times to move this up, then press Command-Control-T to do a free transform, and click and drag inwards while holding Alt, Option, and Shift on the keyboard, just to scale it down from the center a little bit. Okay, tap it up a few more times. Somewhere about there looks pretty good. And now let's go ahead and press Command-Control-S to save it, and then Command-Control-W to close out. And you should now have your logo placed nicely in the top of your packaging. And if you want to adjust it, you can just double-click again, come inside, maybe tap it over to the left a little bit, move it down some if you want to, and then press Command-Control-S to save it again. Alright, so you can see that it'll update each time that you make an adjustment as long as you remember to save it. So now I'm going to move this tab over here, collapse the folder, and then click and drag to drop this into my mockup. Now I'll press Command-Control-T on the keyboard to do a free transform, move it down over here, I'm going to rotate it a bit, and then scale it up by dragging outwards while holding Alt, Option, and Shift. Press Return once you're happy with the size and the placement. And now what I want to do is come back inside of this craft box here, and now select the main box layer. This is the one just above the shadow layer, just below the replace layer. And you'll notice that this replace layer has a clipping mask applied to it. So if I add another layer in between these two, it will also be clipped to the box. So what I'm going to do is select the box layer, come down to the adjustment layer icon, and now add a hue saturation adjustment layer. So you'll see it has that same small arrow, and it's sandwiched in between these two layers, indicating that there is indeed a clipping mask. And all we're going to do now is move this slider up to about 14 or 15, just so we can increase the saturation and make it a little bit closer to that color that we used here on the metallic T box. Alright, because it's a little bit more of a orangish red color rather than just kind of a flat orange color. Alright, and that's looking pretty good. You can play around with that. Maybe you want to boost it a little bit more just to see how it looks. And then we're just going to collapse our folders here and make sure to save our work. Alright, so here is our branded mock-up for our Japanese tea packaging design that we created in Photoshop. And today we've just used a small handful of these elements, but there's still time to check out the Spectacular Textures and Patterns bundle. It really has a ton of great stuff in it that's going to help you guys add some pizzazz to your design work. So I hope that you've enjoyed this tutorial and hopefully picked up a few new tips and tricks along the way. As always, we'd love to see what kind of stuff you guys are doing with this bundle and these resources in your own design work, so please do share that with us. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching today. My name is Eric Vasquez for Design Cuts, and we'll see you next time.